Alright everyone, we start off today with a funny video, which is that the state of California is now losing the marijuana industry. Of course, they legalized marijuana, but it's you have to go through 10 million hoops in order to actually grow it. And effectively what you have is corporations competing with literally everyone else because the weed is so overpriced here, and it was warned of. It's a neoliberal grift. It's basically a black market is just a suppressed free market anyway. When you throttle the supply of weed and you allow effectively monopolies to form, because the only people who can pay for the licensing and the taxes and regulations that are involved are people that are rich, those rich people will go elsewhere if they think they can make even more money. And the black market situation over marijuana in California has apparently grown so severe that some companies are now leaving for greener pastures. I'm a dad now, so I'm allowed to make such joking references. Yes, handpicked by Garcia, or Garcia's handpicked rather, link in the description, archived of course, has cited all of these reasons for leaving. Now let me explain a little bit of the backstory that a lot of people forgot. The legalize it thing really begins with libertarianism on any political level within the United States. Begins many decades ago. The liberals held out just like they did with gay marriage, just like they did with a million other issues that they pretend to champion now, and that the right pretends to champion too. My guns. The issue is effectively taken from that realm once it became a bit more popular. So the activism was done for decades by mainly libertarians and by people who are more like, you know, post-hippie or something. The neoliberals that don't really get along with the far-left post-hippie crowd or with libertarians decided to steal the idea, water it down, make it corporate profit based instead of, hey, let's give a shit about human rights or about basic pragmatism and scientific sense, that realm, and decided to make a lot of money off of it. And so you get a few states that have decriminalized marijuana, which is what should have been done in all cases. That is simply, there's not a law about it in general, other than don't give it to kids, DUI and things like that still apply. If you want to grow a couple of plants, that's fine. If you have a little pot, that's fine. If you're stoned alone at home, that's fine. And the state just doesn't give a shit about it. Just don't traffic it, don't, be selling it to kids, etc. And look the other way, there's a legal gray area, by the way, that predates the legalization of pot in a lot of these states, where a lot of localities, even the metro cops would be like, look, it's a bag of weed, I'm not paid enough to care about this. I think I'll go focus on that carjacker over there. There was a great deal of deferential enforcement going on in most of Vermont, for example, years before the legalization scheme. Now, in other states, they didn't really legalize it. What they did is they decided to license and brand and tax and regulate it, preventing the average person from actually obtaining their weed unless they want to pay effectively the state a shit ton of money, which makes absolutely no sense. The state can already save money just by decriminalizing it in the first place, just in enforcement costs and the cost related to incarceration, etc., etc. You've already saved quite a bit of money, so they're just greedy. The neoliberals stole the issue, just like they stole the issue of gay rights. The concept of gay people being able to get the civil contract known as marriage predates any neoliberal that took up the issue. We're talking the 1970s. So on these issues, in which it is a clear-cut case of liberty, the same liberals pretending like Biden's rambles about it for some reason now, as though he was some sort of great champion of the toket movement back in the good old days when I was in college or something. It's like Bernie Sanders was probably smoking, and I think that Biden was more of a gin and tonic man than anything else. Later on, a cocaine man. Watch some of his Senate speeches if you want a reason to believe that may very well be true. California, though, when it legalized it, quote unquote, they simply decided to hyper-regulate and hyper-tax it. And you've got a bad business climate in California anyway. I mean, if they can't hold on to the fucking weed industry in a state like California, don't you think that there might be a reason why so many people are leaving your state? There might be, and I like it how they always cast it off as, well, we don't want these redneck right-wingers anyway. Let them go to Texas if they want to. This is a weed company. Named after Jerry Garcia, just to be clear about the people that are complaining about your tax and regulatory system. I don't think it's likely that the people that work at that company are MAGA hat wearers. Maybe. I mean, you know, these days the old weed stereotype about it being leftoids is kind of a dead thing at this point. And always, the hillbillies and rednecks always smoked it too. They just got in trouble more. Less deferential enforcement. I would think that this would start a conversation among Californians about, you know, maybe reforming this system so that you can eliminate the black market by getting rid of the illegality of individuals growing the weed. Right now, in order to grow the weed, you need an expensive permit. This is, in some states, the permitting process is easy peasy. It's like a little piece of paper and you've paid a couple $100 and you can grow a small amount of weed. While I still don't support that, there shouldn't be any licensing or regulation at all and people should do whatever the fuck they want, it is less of an impediment than California's system, especially at the business level. You know, California is basically antithetical to its own business interests at times, but they get so many federal tax subsidies to prop everything up that it doesn't really matter to them. It's an interesting state. It's a state that would be like paradise if it were run by different people, I suppose. You know, there are parts of it that look absolutely wonderful. You know, Napa Valley looks pretty cool. Rolling hills full of wine, and I'm sure, and marijuana now, I suppose, too. But less marijuana. Maybe it's secretly the moralists decided to throw the regulations in, hoping that the whole system would come crashing down. Now they're going to go to states that are less regulated. If I'm a mainline businessman who's the only kind of person that can afford the licensing in California to get started from the get-go, but then I notice that I've got another pot farm in another less regulated state that's churning out money and I'm paying a lot less taxes on it, why wouldn't I just double down, sell my California business, use that money to expand, invest, brand, advertise, etc. in this other state where I'm making more money? What you're going to end up with is a California where most of the legit, actually licensed companies leave, and drug cartels will continue to be the main supplier of weed. That and people who are at risk of getting their door bashed in at 4 a.m. because they've got a pot plant out back. So the war on drugs continues. The little guy gets shafted, the cartel gets a lot of money, you're not making anything new in taxes, you're just going to incarcerate people. It'll be the same shit, different asshole. And it's all about the law of supply and demand, by the way, and the fact that regulation is generally a bad thing. Yes, most regulations are goddamn pointless. People act like if you repealed some of the regulations at the federal or state level, all of a sudden companies would pull out all of your PVC piping and replace it with lead for some inexplicable reason. Biden's a big purveyor of that particular apparent mythology. All of a sudden, they would decide that they want to choke the air with fumes and thus destroy their branding. They would decide that they want to make their products lemons so that people would totally not buy their competitors' products. That is an old lie. The old plutocratic era is over. These days, the plutocrats just sit in their positions in the government, or they sit adjacent to them, regulating and making a lot of money. Apparently now they're so regulated they're even at hazard of losing that. Just to be clear about how inept they are. That's about all. Peace out.